Welcome back.
Thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about political organizing because I'm working with the same people you are on a different initiative. Um, and while I have a lot of experience community building, I don't necessarily have a lot of experience actually building like political power in this way. So part of what I was wondering was when I've done community building, it's typically been around like video games. You know, something that generally speaking, a lot of people enjoy, not super divisive unless you start getting into like, I don't know, uh, any of the political topics, I guess. Um, but my question was, like, how do you deal with trying to politically organize when a lot of the radical people who might be really good at bringing in um, folks who are more likely to volunteer? How do you get them on board when like they have very nitpicky um, disagreements with other people you like that are being organized with? You know, like,
Are
oh,
you
you have
referring to
that
me
person.
here?
I cannot get into any specifics legally, but maybe.
I mean, honest to God, if a person's not willing to participate in some effort at coalition building or political power building because they've got a personal beef with other people who may or may not be involved, I don't think that person has a right to call themselves an activist or an advocate of any kind. Yeah, personal beefs are for personal issues. These are political problems. I just don't. I don't get. It's an attitude issue. I don't understand it. It's you can't build political power if every person that you want to build that power with like has to be your buddy beforehand. You know?
Yeah, and I know you did some like very far left organizing in the past, or you've implied that, I think. I
Yeah.
may
I
may
mean, I'm
wrong.
pretty lazy, but I've done some dabbling. Yeah.
So like, how would you handle those situations when they arose? Because I assume they did, because it's leftist organizing. A lot of infighting going on.
My personal experience historically has usually told people to shut the fuck up about it. I mean, really, like, past a point, the problem is a lot of people treat organizing or any kind of, like, direct political involvement as an extension of their moral purity. Like,
Yeah.
if they do canvassing or they do protesting or picketing or pamphlets or flyers or this or that, it's not about the power building, it's about being one of the people doing that thing. And they leverage that as a kind of clout building social opportunity for other left-leaning people in their social spaces. So to them, it's not a political endeavor, it is a personal endeavor. And if it's just a personal endeavor, that means they have, leeway to do their weird little gatekeepy bullshit. But I think you have to stamp out ideas like that. I think you have to be
Yeah.
almost militant about stamping it out because that kind of, myopic narcissism really cuts into the effectiveness of political strategizing. Look at Trump, for example. Trump is, he may be a good mouthpiece for a GOP fascist fake populism, but he's also so narcissistic that he frequently gets in the way of power building in the GOP. He's enough of a threat and enough of an antagonizer, even to his own party, that it's really difficult to rein him in. It's possible that the Jan 6 committee would have a lot less to work with if it weren't for the fact that everyone was desperately trying to rein him in during the day, Because to him,
Yeah.
it's a personal thing. He just likes hearing applause when people say his name. That's it. I don't think he cares about political power building at all.
So, like, would you say like personal beefs or like personal gripes with other people who might be volunteering or helping to organize are largely like antithetical? Like, for example, like if Destiny was organizing like something, some political event, right? To build power. And someone was like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to get involved with that because I hate Destiny." Like, that would be an unproductive attitude to have.
Yeah, well, Even back during the Warnock and Ossoff stuff in 2020, I was still arguing with Destiny, but I encouraged my followers to go and join in his canvassing efforts. Yeah,
Yeah.
a good number of them did, or at least some of them did. Yeah,
Okay.
like think of it as like volunteering, right? Imagine if you had people at like a volunteering, like soup kitchen or whatever, and then some of the volunteers were like, "Oh, I don't want to provide meals for the poor because I hate Dennis over there. Dennis sucks." Like, can you imagine? Like, everyone would kick them in the head. Like, no one would take that shit because they'd be obviously like the most selfish piece of shit in the world. Everyone would see through that. But for some reason, with organizing, the difference is with organizing, they're able to frame their personal disagreements as a political disagreement. Like, they're ideologically opposed to working with this other person, even if they're working together on something they agree with, because of some nebulous, like, purity gatekeeping bullshit. Like, somehow the effectiveness of this protesting effort will be denigrated if there's someone there who I have some other obsequious, unrelated disagreement about?
Yeah. Have you found like there's a really effective way to kind of refocus? Because I mean, you have a very large community who are politically active, and
I
I
think I'm
I, I love
misusing
y'all.
I think I'm misusing obsequious. I think I'm thinking of like circuitous. Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
No worries. So I was just wondering, like, is there an effective way to message to an audience or to people who are already politically engaged to cut that shit out? Like, is it effective to just be blunt, or do you need to kind of work around to that to get everyone kind of on the relatively same page, at least on that specific
I
uh
I think you have to be
point?
blunt. I think you have to be very direct because it's the only way to cut through selfish behavior.
Mhm.
Like when people are being selfish, directness is almost always the best way to handle it because you have to shock them into the better position. Usually people's sense of shame kicks in and it works off that. And that's one of the ways in which shame is like a really effective social regulator because it's really embarrassing to realize that you've been holding back like a meaningful effort because you're being like narcissistic or whatever. Because I think catering to it like never works. This is one of my big issues with like a breadtube community because there are some seriously fucked up demographics within breadtube, like crazy woke scolds or tankies or whatever, who do a lot of shitty shit, abusive behavior, like targeting content creators. But a lot of the people there don't want to go after them because they're hoping that these kind of like banal niceties, make a video on how it's mean to cancel people or whatever. Like that'll work. And it won't, you have to be very direct. And if some people like peel off because of that, it's way better to have a well-functioning activist group with 8 people than an infighty, ineffective activist group with 10. Like it's always better to have the cohesion than it is to have those few extra people.
Okay, that's a really good point, because I was wondering about that too. I was gonna ask, like, if there was utility in allowing those people in the first place, or immediately just cutting that off. Um,
Because
yeah,
you don't want it to fester. Because it will.
exactly.
Yeah, people are very good at rationalizing their biases. Give a drama stirrer long enough, and they'll convince a large group of people. Oh, we all can't work together because of this people or that person or this belief or that belief. It's poison. It's seditious. You have to confront it very directly, and sometimes people change. I mean, not everyone who acts like that is malicious or whatever, but I do
Yeah,
think it's important to be direct about it because if not, like it won't take long before people will be unduly sympathetic to those misleading ideas, and then you have more people who you might have to have that talk with.
and on top of that, is there an effective way to kind of get those types of people off like their moral high horse, or if they are on the high horse, they are just on the high horse? There's no way to get them off, and you just kind of have to be like, okay, you bye.
Oh, you can easily get off high horses and the people on them. But if you mean changing their minds, uh, the I think I mean it's a difficult social exercise. I just think it's important to blunt the damage to their ego by framing it in an appropriate way. Because if people's egos get too hurt, they'll just walk out on anything. Like people will walk away from any cause they agree with if their ego is sufficiently damaged. People are prideful. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of like the no fucking your coworkers rule in workplaces, you know? Like it's you just you fold your arms, hey, listen, you know, I understand you have disagreements, but we're all here because we care about this issue and we're trying our best to work on this issue, and I worry that if we all break apart and start arguing over, you know, petty internal divides, we're never going to get that done. So as long as you're in here doing this, I don't want to hear about any of this. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear you complaining. We'll keep a positive attitude. We're here to work on this. And that way, if they fuck up in the future, it becomes a them thing. Like, oh, you're talking about this again? Like, why do you keep bringing it up? You want to make it like you want them to be self-conscious about being the type of person who would impede a social effort, you know, as a product of their own personal gripes.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard doing that. I mean, it's not always going to work, right? A lot of people are just going to be, you know, some people are just kind of unworkable. But that's always the case. You know, it can't work with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just been something I've been struggling with because uh, again, I'm working with those folks to organize a different initiative, but I've been like sending people towards your volunteer map because it's such a phenomenal tool. Like for real, chatters,
It's
please
pretty.
use that. It's so pretty. It's super easy to use. Um, and this is, while it's definitely in my wheelhouse of talents, I haven't encountered like people being like, well, if that person's going to be, you know, working with you or even tangentially related, then I'm not going to have anything to do with it. And I haven't really encountered that before. So I was just kind of
I,
curious about
I think people like that
your.
are they're fundamentally ineffective too. I mean, with respect, like sometimes people's attitudes are just not conducive to teamwork or power building. It's like the attitude of those people on Twitter who will like tell their mutuals to unfollow a problematic person, and if they don't, they'll unfollow them. This person is, by way of their skull shape, incapable of like meaningful social change. They're just not capable of working with other people. They're phrenologically condemned to like meaningless bickering in social spaces. So
Yeah.
I think working to identify stuff like that. I think when working with left-leaning people, the last thing that you need to care about is how left-leaning they actually are, and the thing you
Hmm.
need to care about most is like their attitude and sociability, because you can get like insanely effective, well-meaning and dedicated, driven like liberals or social democrats who don't know a word of Marx and don't even
Hmm.
particularly care about like anti-capitalism. They just care about some progressive issue or like lower rent prices or some crap like that. But if they have the right attitude, I mean, they can do anything. But there are lots of
Yeah.
people out there who think that being the most lefty gives them infinite leeway, like their ideological purity is like compensates for their lack of efficacy in actual action, and those people are insufferable. And identifying that early on is really helpful because it's
Yeah.
easy to get like tricked into thinking that because they've read Capital or whatever, that they're actually like a worthwhile person to keep around.
Yeah. I interviewed Odessa Kelly not that long ago, and
I
she was
saw that,
talking
by the
about.
way.
Oh, thank you. Uh, but she was talking about how she had conservatives who volunteer on her campaign, and I found that really, really interesting. And she talked a bit about how, um, essentially, they were some of her biggest supporters, despite like, you know, having a bunch of crucial differences. You know, some on some political issues. You know, and they they were really useful for her campaign. And, you know, despite the disagreements, they were able to come together and be like, hey, yeah, we do want more money in our pocket more than we hate gay people. Hey, like, you know, I'm paraphrasing. But you know, we do want a functional hospital within driving distance of our community, as opposed to like making sure trans people stay out of sports or whatever. Um,
Well, you
and
you don't you don't just want to be an ideological organization. A lot of
yeah,
socialists don't get this, but like most people, the vast majority of people don't have strong political allegiances to ideologies. They have allegiances to people, to ideas, to
Hmm.
families, to nations, sometimes if they're very cucked, but like generally not to like an idea. Like people, you won't ask a person what they believe, and they'll be like, oh, I'm a neoconservative. Oh, I'm a socialist. Oh, I'm a this, that. People will usually start listing out policies they believe in or general like vibes they agree with, but they'll rarely give you an ist, or an ism. So a socialist org can't just be the org that does socialism. The socialist org has to provide the box lunches, It has to care for the needs of the community. And sometimes that means like filling potholes. Sometimes that means like, going to city board meetings and complaining about how the traffic light at a given intersection is dangerous, or that there's not you know, like a crossing guard at a given intersection or whatever. It's not just about the socialism. It's about being useful to people. And if you're useful to
Yeah.
people who aren't socialists will be useful to you because they'll be seen as part of the Black Panther Party did this. They were
Hmm.
socialists, but like they gave meals to kids in Chicago, and all the parents who are driving their kids over there to get their free breakfast before school. It's not like they weren't thinking like, ah, yes, the socialist organization I'm dropping my kid off at. No, they knew how to serve the needs of the local community. That's why they were so dangerous. That's why the feds got them all killed.
Yeah, and that is why like volunteering or taking like community jobs, community oriented jobs, like is a really effective way to like politically shift people.
And this is why
Um,
you can't have those purity leftists either, because they can't do this, right? Like this involves interacting with people who might not just be lefties, who might actually have like kind of reprehensible political beliefs. But it's better to fix the pothole, for the complaining conservative family than not. That doesn't embolden conservatism. It emboldens you and maybe their perspective of you.
yeah, like and I know I keep going back to this, but it was a really interesting conversation. Like Odessa Kelly had like a background in basically running the local community center, in her community, and she did go out and like fix potholes. And the reason one of the big reasons these conservatives come out to volunteer for her is because they know her, because she's like gone out and like fixed the end of their driveway. She's like gone out and like helped teach some of their kids, like it's so I guess I am somewhat confused by people who are purity testing the folks that they're going to be organizing with, and I'm not really sure how to wrap my head around that.
We just have a different set of priorities. For a lot of people, it's just social satiation. It's just about feeling like the best lefty or whatever. I'm constantly, confused by the behavior I see online by some so-called like politically active types. But you can always see them for what they are.
Hmm.
You can see the people, they've never been to a protest, whatever. And I'm not speaking as somebody who like goes outside a bunch. I don't. I don't like protests. They're too noisy. Um, I like directing other people to protests. I think I'm very good at that. It's, to everyone their best role and everything. But some people, it's very, very obvious that this is all just kind of like a chic aesthetic. Um, and there are always going to be people like that. But I think it's important to have a firm hand with them, because their behavior should not impede the work of people who are principally leftist and principally effective.
Yeah. And just while I'm here, chat, think about ways you can help your own communities. If you're in an apartment building, maybe like see if your landlord will let you set up like a little free library that will allow you to like put out books for the community, the people in your building, and maybe put some radical literature in there. Stuff like that. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, like you can get involved in similar ways. Doesn't have to be going outside. You can stay inside and volunteer inside somehow. I don't know. Think about it.
There's a reason why the unions were the most effective vehicle for leftist change ever in the history of this country. And it's because unions may have been overwhelmingly organized by and led by socialists. But a union isn't a socialist political bloc. It's a
Mhm.
pro-worker political bloc. And workers like pro-worker political blocs, whether or not they're socialists. Plenty of people of
Mhm.
different ideological dispositions were in favor of the unions back then because they were getting screwed over by the robber barons, and they did like it when things and that in that vein changed, but it wasn't like, let's do socialism. It's, let's get our fucking bread. You
Yeah.
meet people where they're at.
A lot of it was yo, that coal baron, fuck him. And that, maybe we need to bring back that a little bit more,
God willing, we'll get there.
fuck him. Anyway, thank you for the time for the conversation. I know you're trying to wrap up stream, so I'll skedaddle.
Oh, that's
But
okay. I
lovely talking with
appreciated
you
it.
again.
And yeah, likewise. It's been a while because I got banned from Twitch. And then since
Yeah.
then, I've just been kind of avoiding the place. But yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. See ya.
Take care. That was Riverboat Jack. I've hosted her a few times. She streams on Twitch. She's cool.